What is the difference between grain-free food and regular food? So you know, you hear all these things about grain-free food, with grain food. Is that good for us? Is it not good for us? Is it good for some dogs? How do you decide?
Okay, now, so there's a perception issue first of all, okay, that we have to address. So first of all, when we talk about grain-free food, the way grain-free food is projected and marketed and advertised is like, it's like the, you know, like the best alternative to, you know, to pet food. And similarly, when we look at regular food or food with grains, you know, the common perception is that, oh, the food that has grains is like the absolute worst kind of food, right? There's also this common belief that dogs shouldn't have grains, or dogs shouldn't consume grains. All valid arguments, but in their own, you know, reasonable restriction, right? So when we talk about grain-free food, the grain-free food necessarily, the pet food that has been marketed as a grain-free food, it doesn't necessarily mean that the food has no carbs. Okay. All right. So grain-free is usually attached and marketed and promoted as if it's a carb-free diet, which it is not, right? If you look at the ingredient list of most grain-free preparations, you will have other forms of carbs. You will have tapioca starch, you will have pea starch, you will have potato starch, you will have other forms of starches which are there, which are present in the food. So the food doesn't have any grains or doesn't have any starch coming in, say, from a wheat or from corn or from any other grain per se, but it still has starch, right? Not necessarily great for your dog, right? Similarly, when we talk about grain or foods with grain, right? Not all grains are bad, first of all, right? And when I say not all grains are bad, not all grains in every form are bad. The problem with most foods or most pet foods that are known to have grains is that they are known to have the worst form of grains. They're known to have the byproducts of the grain industry. Whole grains per se are not completely bad. Yes, your dog probably doesn't need them, right? But it's not poisonous. It's not going to be toxic. Okay. What is really important to consider here is how much of a particular grain is being fed as part of his diet. You can get away with, yes, you know, I think Preeti mentioned that you shouldn't give roti to your dog. Of course, roti, wheat, anything that has gluten, anything that has maida, atta, semolina, anything that has one of these components should be kept away from your dog by and large. All dogs, by and large, right? But yes, there are thousands of dogs that are surviving on roti. There are thousands of dogs that are okay with dalia. There are several dogs that may be okay with, you know, occasional grains here and there. It's just that we have to monitor how much of that grain goes into their body. You cannot have a dog whose staple diet is coming from grains. They need to have a meat-based diet. They need to have proteins. They need to have fats. They need to get everything in balance. Along with that, if you are supplementing the diet with a little bit of grains, and the grains are high quality and they are coming in from legitimate sources, they're fine. But the problem with most grains is, or most pet foods with grains is, that one, they use the absolute worst part of grains. They'll use wheat gluten. Husk. Basically the husk and hulls. आप जब grain खरीदते हो तो उसके ऊपर से जो छिलका निकलता है, which you usually throw away, that's the part that is used in pet foods, right? Okay. That's not adding any value to the food. Even pet foods that are known to have whole grains, they write whole corn or whole wheat. The problem with whole corn is it's the entire corn with the cob
and the leaf,
and the stem and everything else that corn really comes up with, right? Same with wheat. If they say that it has whole wheat, it has the wheat, it has the wheat germ, it has the grain of the wheat, it has the hull on top of the wheat, it also probably has the stems and, you know, like the leaves of the wheat plant, the wheat crop. Okay. That is what is going into the pet food, and it's not the grain exactly, but one, the incorrect proportions of the grain, and two, the incorrect format of that grain is what is causing that problem. Right? You're absolutely fine if your dog is eating a high quality grain and, you know, moderate quantities. Of course, it cannot be a staple for your dog. Your dog needs to have meat, your dog needs to have fat, but along with that, he could do with a little bit of grains. The best grains for dogs, usually the most, and another factor that I want to mention here is some people go to the other extreme, that okay, probably we shouldn't, we should still be feeding grains, but they'll be like, okay, we only give brown rice to our dog. We only feed quinoa to our dog. Well, they're great, right? But when it comes to diet, you also have to feed local. You cannot go ahead and feed brown rice or quinoa to your dog,
source properly,
which is not sourced properly. I mean, see, at the end of the day, if the grain takes 2 months to transit from, say, South America to here, the grain is probably going to develop a lot of, these alpha toxins as part of molds, as part of fungal infections, as part of a lot of other things that your dog is not going to enjoy, and certainly is not going to assimilate and then process it, completely. He is probably going to develop a lot of problems. Might as well feed local. You could get away with a little bit of white rice. You could get away with a little bit of, in rare cases, again, it should not be the staple, but in rare cases, you could get away with a little bit of atta, you could get away with a little bit of roti as well, but it shouldn't be a staple. It shouldn't be the primary source of nutrients or food for your dog.
But the dogs don't require grains.
They don't particularly require. It's not a nutritional requirement. It's always a filler.
Like a filler.
It's mostly like a filler. It's the idea of grain is, see, again, when you talk about pet food or when you talk about feeding your dog, everybody has to keep their budgets in mind, right? They cannot just go on feeding a diet, and at the end of the day, even if they feed a completely meat-based diet, if the dog's not getting enough exercise, if he has to sit in the apartment and sleep all day, then probably the best of diets won't really do justice. So the dog has to exercise, the dog has to venture out, the dog has to run around, the dog has to be a dog. And on top of that, you could get away with a little bit of junk food here and there, and by junk food I mean grains roti and once in a while it's fine, but you can't really have a dog that only feeds doodh roti, hardly ventures out.
I've seen some people like there's this quantity of roti and then they just sprinkle thoda sa shredded chicken on top and just water.
Barely, and that too they do that. If the dog is refusing too much, they'll sprinkle it as a icing,
as an icing, as a topping. So they'll kind of decorate the food.
They're essentially just eating roti.
No,
right.
I just tell them, just think this way, that how the animals are being fed. If they are in nature, how will they eat? What basic they will eat? Dogs are not going to make roti and chapati. You are processing the whole food. I think all the packaged foods out there, they are over processed. We also don't need processing, and they don't need the processed food. So I just tell them, go with the basic thing, whatever comes in your mind, like what a dog will eat
in nature.
In nature. Unfortunately, the BAF diet, lot of this thing. Diet, so raw diet, lot of people, they contacted me for the BAF diet idea also. So they were telling me, I said, only you just tell me the source of the chicken. If you cannot source a quality meat, like you cannot eat yourself that chicken or meat, you cannot give it to the dog, because you don't know what kind of infections, what kind of problems.
Oxytocin is injected into them.
The hormone thing. But primarily my concern is the diseased animals. Whether we don't know
diseased
whether
animals, dead animals. Unfortunately, the pet industry is ridden with roadkills.
So that's why. So I said, if you don't, the guy was telling me, I'll put this in the BAF diet, I'll put that, I'll get this oil from US, I'll get that oil. I said, please, dude, just tell me the chicken source. Where are you getting the chicken source? If you can't tell me the chicken source, that's the major reason why, unfortunately, I tell, if the clients I see lot of issues in their system, body systems, vomiting, diarrhea is there. For me, sometimes it's easier telling them, dog food दे दो, क्योंकि आपको पता नहीं है कि आप क्या दे रहे हो आप, and plus people, unfortunately, they will get the worst for the dog, like सबसे सस्ता जो बिल्कुल रह गया और residual, because it is a सस्ता thing for them to feed. So I said, nobody is telling you. In fact, what he emphasized on the diet majorly, but I tell them that nobody is saying you to just extend your like boneless chicken thing and only get the boneless fish and boneless chicken for your animal. But I think you have to think, you have to balance it out with also that how effectively and economically you can feed them with the home cooked diet options also, rather than just giving them doing all wrong things and just ending up spending more money at the veterinary clinic.
Because sometimes people also think, oh, I'm buying like the most expensive boneless chicken, but that's not digestible protein. The entire, what in the entire body of the chicken that you buy for your dog, maybe the chicken breast and the chicken thigh would have the maximum fat that the dog requires to digest the protein. You're actually giving him boneless chicken, which is of no use to the dog.
Which is basically
and then you're mentally thinking
of all
that
the fat. All it has is protein. That too.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Plus, there are a lot of other factors. I mean, how you process that meat, how it goes into your dog's diet, and, you know, how it's cooked, what temperatures, what pressures is it cooked. So there are a lot of variations. There are a lot of variables that go into it.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, whatever you decide to feed your dog, it has to be balanced. You have to consult a vet or a nutritionist, find out whatever you're feeding. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be balanced by a large extent. And you should be able to sustain it for a long period of time. It doesn't make sense if I feed my dog the best of pet foods the first month, and the remaining months he has to survive with something with junk because I ran out of all my budget in the first month.
So whatever you choose should be sustainable, and you should be able to spend enough money and time to do that. So if you're doing home food, then you should be able to put together the vegetables and the grains and the meat.
I had researched a lot of this with my first ever dog that I got, and there's this one particular topic that I want to mention is gut flora. So there is this thing, I mean, the nutritionist and the vet on the panel would help me out with this a little bit, is that I think it's in the gut, in the around the intestines, there's something like grass, these small flora kind of things inside the stomach of the dog.
You call them villi, intestinal villi.
Yeah, microvilli. So what happens is there are certain things that are good for that, and specifically the bad grains, the husk and everything reduce the gut flora, so it diminishes inside the gut. Now once that is not there, other things also going in the stomach are not metabolized because of that. So things like atta, maida and all, they totally damage the gut flora. That is where the development of the yeast formation starts coming in.
Yeast formation, allergies will all start manifesting only after.
All the patches, all the yeast, all everything. When people say, oh, he's only allergic to potatoes, chicken and roti because the vet has done an allergy test in the clinic or something like that. It is essentially any one ingredient that you have been overfeeding for the last 3 years without paying attention whether it is good for the dog or not. We're only paying attention whether the dog likes it or not, or he finishes it or not. But we're not paying attention that if I give you in staple diet Pepsi for 3 years, some really significant damage, you know, people say bones dissolve or something like that. Similarly, any one damaging ingredient, if we give it in passing like junk food, had it once in a while, I've thrown rotis to my dog, that's fine, as training, as fun. But the staple that is kept, if it is kept in junk, then there will be some really drastic damages which no form of medicine or nothing will be able to, you know, undo. For example,
unfortunately, by the time you would start noticing those changes, it will be already
irreversible damage.
So by the time it's irreversible, your dog is old, his organs are damaged, he's gone through a lot of stress all these years, and he's gotten used to patterns. So he's already used to eating just roti, for example.
Then you
can't make him eat anything else in the world. You can't expect the dog to just change his habits overnight, because he doesn't understand the repercussions of, you know, his lifestyle that he has been used to for all of these years.
And this is what I tell my clients also, that for a human mind to actually go and open the fridge and eat something, we have a lot of emotions and this thing, okay, fridge, there is a treat there, okay, there is a pastry there. So our mind, that's why we are superior than all the animals in the list. So, but what you are feeding your dog is only decided by you. And his health is not decided by himself, but you. So you have to meticulously think of what you are feeding them, so that their body is not this is like, so I have sometimes to, I'm sorry that I have to tell them that it is zahar, it is like poison for them. They are giving these hides and these treats and high and raw hide and this thing, and they will enjoy it, but they cannot have it every day. So their question is sometimes like this to us also, how many times I can feed them, is it good, can we give it more? So a lot of my intestinal problems with my pets I have faced, that they are being on these, they're so habitual on these treats and all that, but I usually tell them that for the time, at least then they say, he's going on the counter, telling me that give me this treat, and I was like, I can't help it, he's like looking very sad. I said, give him gajar. Then they will sometimes, like she said that it is not good, but at that time if I compare that raw hide with the gajar, I was saying gajar, he's just smelling the gajar, he's not doing anything. I I say, but please just don't give anything, give aloo, give anything, let them play with some natural things. Don't give them these things because they get serious problems with all these over-the-counter things, the treats and hides, and people are going abroad and buying whole bunch of treats and things, and they think that, and they show me and say they cannot have it. They show me no. It says grain free. It says it's written.
Yeah, but they don't read rest of the ingredients. How much glycerine?
So there are lot of it's written like grain free. Then I think there's another thing: soy free, wheat free, gluten free. Like this thing, they write it down.
All the buzzwords that sell.
Yeah, that sell. Yeah, this is the marketing thing, and I sometimes feel that okay, the pet owners are also getting carried away with all these things.
You have to basically read the ingredients.
Least ingredients there are, like if they're under 5 ingredients, which means you're going with the naturally, sourced treats, and they will be much more expensive also. If you have words that you can't even read, like things that you see at the back of a perfume or a deodorant, you sometimes see at the back of the treat product, long names, chemical emulsifiers, this process, that process, that for a fact is the product to sell.
I've got a client whose dog is addicted to dentistics. The only thing he eats is dentistics.
Really?
That's it. And he has the worst dental profiles or the worst dental health that imaginable for a dog. Because he doesn't have any natural food going into his body at all he gets is processed ingredients.
I can't tell you, there are few dog foods and food treats on these things that the dog will smell it and he'll have it.
That's perfume, that's chemicals sprayed on it.
So there are rendered fats that are sprayed on treats and pet foods, that there are chemicals, or there are natural chemicals that are introduce something like MSG, which is very commonly used in pet foods, and it has a very addictive effect.
Pet industry also it is.
Absolutely, all of these,
all the treats have MSG is why the addictive factor comes.
The addictive factor comes in. Why the dog doesn't want to eat anything else apart from
dog
MSG.
Specific, designed for dog MSG, so it's a different chemical formulation for the dog's nose and brain addiction. To simplify it for a pet parent, go on National Geographic, watch wolves and hyenas hunting. Okay, because they are ancestors to a dog. Asian wolf is an ancestor to a dog. When a wolf goes and hunts a deer, they eat all the skin, all the fur, all the flesh. They eat most of the bones. They only leave 30-40% of the bones that they don't feel like. And the only grains or vegetables they eat is inside the stomach of the animal, whatever undigested is there. So if you see in terms of calculation, that's only 15-20%. Bones is still 30-40%, and the remainder is all skin and muscle and all meat basically. So the cultural problem that we are also having is that, oh, because I cannot touch or I can't even think of non-veg because of certain inhibitions, which means that my dog also has to be religious and vegetarian and all of that. You are being the worst to your dog on that matter. If you want to change that, okay, meat cannot come to your house, you go up to the nearest egg stall, go up to a butcher, take your dog to a boarding or a place, but make sure 70-80% of protein has been ingested, and well sourced and naturally sourced protein.
And locally sourced.
Locally sourced, not like, again, there's good meat where you can locally source it and organically source it, or there's roadkill, there's chickens with cancer, there's calves,
diseased
cows, babies in dairy are basically killed and thrown away, which are then sold to dog food companies so that the milk can be produced in the cows regularly. So dairy also contributes, and so all these elements are there. And when it's all processed, we can't see it, right? And but mostly the main factor to keep in mind is what would a wolf eat. Wolf will not make roti, they will not go to a shop to have lollipop or chocolate or toffee or anything. They will see an animal, they will kill it, they will have the hair, the bones, the meat, a little bit of bones will be left, and rest, whatever grains or veg they get, is from the stomach. So that's the overall assessment, how to make the recipe at home basically. What kind of percentages to keep in terms of food and everything. So any corrections on that?
No, I think that's perfectly spot on.
No, that's great. So, but meat has to be a large part of your dog's diet, even if you are vegetarian.
I think people should also do a little bit of research. I think what Adnan has, the way he's put it, is absolutely bang on. But since we are living in India, and there will be houses where no matter what you do, there will be problems with feeding a non-vegetarian diet. People have to read a lot about what are the good sources of vegetarian protein and not give dog's roti. My dog can have milk and roti because in our house chicken is not allowed. So
or there are services wherein
there are services
wherein you could still subscribe to food and
to cook fresh food which has the right balance
on your own.
So even if you're not eating it and you don't want to cook it, but at least you can source the right food.
But I would say it's unfair then to have a dog or a cat in such a setup. If you have a carnivore, raise a carnivore. Same with cat, that I love cats but I want to make it live on vegetarian food. I saw this really horrible article online. I felt worst about it, that there was a vegan activist who got a fennec fox, is called. It's a domesticated fox, who was living on a vegan diet. And when she got this fox, because in US you can online order animals, right, snakes and all, you just order them online and they come home as pets. And when she started her YouTube videos, I mean, I'm not going to name names or anything, the fox was obviously beautiful looking, nice fur and everything. By the end of that, we must have seen
2 months, I think it was a 2 month
within a couple of weeks, 2 months, literally you could see the body would fall off almost. The eyes were about to fall off, the teeth were going, she was just killing the animal basically.
So I think that's a consideration that we have to make before we get the puppy home. If we live in a family where we cannot afford, when we cannot, due to cultural reasons, due to whatever reasons, if we cannot feed a meat-based or a species-appropriate diet to the animal that we are getting home, don't get the animal. If you think you're a vegetarian family, get a rabbit.
Play with someone else's animal, get the experience. But if you are a dog lover, then be able to bend the rules to the extent that, okay, I will not touch meat, I will get some helper, I will get a separate fridge. I know people who are committed. I'll get a separate freezer.
We have a lot of clients who keep a separate fridge. They have a guard. I mean, of course, they have resources. Not a lot of people have resources, but somebody who wants to do it, they find ways to do it.
And I've suggested that, okay, we don't want anything in the house, go out for a walk. There's, boiled egg stall outside or something like that. You see it right in front of your eyes, feed it, but if you love your dog, do things that show the love to the dog.
Correct, and getting a dog is also a responsibility. It is not a toy, right? So you have to be ready to make some changes to suit the dog's requirements, right?
Absolutely.
So that effort needs to be made.